Museums. They are important as they can preserve history for generations. This is especially important for ships, because they are expensive to maintain and most can never preserve one on their own as a lone individual. This is the case for Manitoba's only maritime museum, the Marine Museum of Manitoba. The museum tells the story of the development and the operation of marine life on Lake Winnipeg and the Red River, circa 1850 to the present day. Visitors get to board the actual ships that navigated the waters of the world's 10th largest lake, and will learn about how the Port of Selkirk played a vital role in the development of Manitoba. The lake is located in Selkirk, Manitoba, only 35 kilometers from downtown Winnipeg, so it makes for a great day trip if you live in or are visiting Winnipeg. The museum is a non-profit and is backed by local businessmen, the local, provincial, and federal governments, so the future is very bright for the museum. It all began 51 years ago in 1972, with a group of 20 Selkirk businessmen buying an old wooden, late 19th century ship abandoned in the Selkirk Slough 6 years earlier in 1966. The ship, of course, is Manitoba's wooden flagship, the SS Kenora. However, it wasn't until the summer of 1973 that the Kenora was finally, after 7 years, dragged out of the Selkirk Slough for the final time, and she opened as a museum ship soon after, remaining in place ever since, paving a path to the museum's future success. The museum has 6 fully complete vessels now. Before going into them, none are able to float, as you're sitting on concrete blocks to prevent them sinking in the mud. And if the museum area floods, the vessels can be knocked off the concrete, and it's incredibly difficult and expensive to put them back on. So, this is done by making the vessels flood if the water rises around them, so they do not get knocked off. The vessels were actually knocked off in the 90s, when the museum and surrounding park flooded. After that, they were made to flood, and a dike was constructed around the park to protect the vessels from rising floodwaters, as the Red River is very prone to flooding in the spring. And since the 90s, and these measures being implemented, they haven't flooded once. The museum has 6 complete vessels, all of which will have their own video eventually. The first is, of course, the Kenora, built in 1896 and 1897. She is the oldest and largest preserved vessel in Manitoba, and joined the museum, of course, in 1972. Second is Canadian Coast Guard ship, formerly fisheries ship Bradbury, a fisheries patrol vessel and an icebreaker, built in 1915, retired in 1973, and joined the museum not long after. Third ship was the ship tasked to take Kenora's passengers and cargo through the Nelson River, as Kenora had a draft that was much too deep for parts of the route. This is the MS Chicuma II. Built in 1942, it also occasionally towed barges. Retired in 1966 along with the Kenora, she didn't stay in the slough, and was privately restored and later joined the museum, although I couldn't find when. The fourth vessel is the MS Lady Canadian, a fish freighter built in 1944, rebuilt in 1963, and later used as a Manitoba Hydro survey ship. I couldn't find anything else about her, or when she joined the museum, but she's still there in great condition today. The fifth vessel is the barge tug MS Pegasus II, built in 1955 and active until 1974. Joined the museum sometime after, although again I couldn't find when. The sixth and final vessel just so happened to replace the Kenora, and the Chicuma too. It's the MS Joe Simpson, built in 1963, and actually used the Kenora's original diesel engines. She was retired in or before 1994, and was donated to the museum in 1994, being both the newest vessel in terms of build date and museum acquisition date. The future of all 6 vessels and the museum itself is quite bright. And who knows, maybe Nemeo and the Vacta will eventually join them when they're retired. Who knows? But for now, the museum has 6 vessels and the pride of Manitoba lake and river history, and hopefully, it will be there for many generations to come.